Hey, folks, we've been talking about AI coding a lot lately, and yet there's another announcement. This one from an outfit called Reflection, where they have launched an AI app dev tool called Asimov, interestingly enough. But they're claiming that all the previous tools were far too focused on just writing code, and that's a small percentage of the job for developers. And they were saying, we're going to do this right with a framework that's a little more end to end. Tracy, are they on to something here?
I think it is, if we think about it in the terms of DevOps and platform engineering, 100%. I mean, what they're really doing is acknowledging that developers do more than code. And most of what we have been talking about in the past is code generation. I think they're broadening the scope here so that we are understanding systems kind of at scale as opposed to a single piece of code. So, developers talk a lot, developers collaborate a lot, developers do much more than just code. And it feels to me that we're finally acknowledging that there is something beyond code. It's an AI tool that, is interfacing with more intelligent teams and functioning more like an intelligent teammate, which is essential in the DevOps world and even more essential in platform engineering, as platform engineering is really taking a broader kind of approach to DevOps and incorporating DevOps into what they do, but broadening how we see a developer's role. And, we've had this discussion before about software developers and what they do. And, are developers worth the money that we pay them? Because don't they just sit there and code, and can't we just generate it now? But developers do way more. So I think this is an interesting step, and it feels to me like it is broadening DevOps and platform engineering as well as just generating code is not what developers do. It's such a misnomer. Developers do so much more, and this collaboration function will be super helpful.
I agree, Tracy. And it steps into the realm of, I think all of us have probably been in an organization where we say we have to capture that institutional knowledge that we have. So go fill out a wiki page every time we get a request from somebody, or we solve a problem, or we find something out, and you do that for about 2 times and stop doing it because it's a pain in the butt. Now, I mean, what they're doing with Asimov is really saying there's a lot of knowledge that's embedded, maybe even locked in silos of Slack channels and IRC and repositories and file servers and all kinds of places where we've got information, maybe in tickets and Jira. Who knows where that stuff is? Let's go find that stuff, institutionalize it, make it available to technical people, developers. Someone that's saying, "I think I've seen this before." Yeah, you have. Here's where it happened before. Here's what we did. Now you can actually surface some of that information and make it more readily available. I think platform engineering is a perfect example, right? Because so many things coalesce at that stage, which is, how do I create this so I can support what all the other people are doing? Well, how do I know what they're doing? This is a great way to find out.
And think about the money that we have spent over the years in losing tribal knowledge when somebody really key moves to another company.
The bread syndrome.
It's an astronomical amount of money, but let me tell you, it is a big cost. Tribal knowledge and containing it has always been a challenge, and it's so essential in systems. I mean, I've seen companies where somebody left and they couldn't get production systems updated.
Yeah, it's transition plans. But let me get to the nitty gritty here, though, of what we're discussing, because I've seen this blowing up on my LinkedIn feed over the last couple days. I saw a recent study that said using AI, developers are 19% less productive. Almost 20% less productive because AI sort of slows them down. At the same time, I saw 2 or 3 studies that said with AI, developers are 20 to 30% more productive.
Well, I think that goes, Alan, to how do you measure the productivity? And if you're measuring it by lines of code generated versus many different metrics for software development productivity, right? And to Tracy's point, if you're only looking at how much code you generate, that's, generating the code is easy. It's the developing the architecture of the system and understanding how all the pieces work together. That's where the human knowledge and the tribal knowledge comes into play, and the human expertise that we don't have AI for yet. Right? Once you have a small module and you can get down to defining the small module, the coding part is not the big deal, so to speak. That's not where the intelligence in the system comes in. The intelligence in the system comes in from the humans who figure out how to put all the pieces together in what order and how to make it all work together.
Yeah, I think the paradox is that when you talk to developers, they'll say, yeah, it writes code, but the code it writes doesn't know anything about the intended target systems that it's going to run on. So then the code doesn't work. But because the machine wrote the code, I don't know how it was constructed. So I'm actually spending more time fixing the code that the machine created than I would if I wrote it in the first place.
Yeah, just use a personal experience. I posted this on LinkedIn the other day about I had to have a little heart-to-heart, tough conversation with my AI that was working on a project for me because it was going down the wrong path. And I've suddenly realized that maybe I'm just not prompting it or guiding it enough. And what I realized was there is a lot more to prompting, and this is true in software as well. When you're using a tool like Cursor or maybe this Asimov, is there is so much context setting that you have to do for it to do the right thing. It doesn't know the right thing to do. It knows how to do things, and it'll do what you ask it to do. It may not be the right thing or done the right way, and I think that's some of the productivity loss, Mike, is learning how to engineer this so you get results that you can use, not just crappy code or code that doesn't match your environment or code that I have to review to find problems with it so it doesn't fail later down the road. So I think there's a learning curve. We're learning a different programming language. We're learning prompting in a different way. And there's a lot more to it than just, I'm a developer and I know how to write code and you work on CRM systems. Now write this code. A lot more to it than that.
Yeah. And how many times have I said on the show, we do not store or manage DevOps data. And I've said this so many times. I'm going to pat myself on the back for pointing it out. Because when I read this article, I realized what they were saying was the same thing. And they're pulling in data from multiple locations so that when you do have like a big DevOps problem, a really large challenge with the deployments, you have multiple sources of information that helps you pinpoint where the problem is. And this is a challenge for every team. Every team goes through this. Who made a change? Where did that change happen? Deploy Hub, we worry about storing configuration data so we can see those little changes. This is going way beyond that, and it's saying we've got to look at all kinds of sources of truth. What was the GitHub issue? What were the Slack threads? There was a little company called Jelly. Jelly, I think, bought by somebody else, and they were doing the same with tickets. They were looking at tickets to look at patterns. So this is due. We need this, and DevOps teams are going to love it. They're going to love it.
Asimov, get it. It's good stuff. Hey guys, I think we're going to wrap up here on today's version of The Gang. It was a quick Monday. Get your week off to a great start. We've got, of course, TechStrong TV right behind it. So stay tuned for that. We'll be back tomorrow with another fresh gang. We hope you enjoyed this, though. But for now, on behalf of Mike, Mitchell, Tracy, and Jack, this is Alan Schimmel. We're out of here.